Some content or topics discussed could trigger a past anxiety or be sensitive or disturbing to listen to or view. Please view and listen with caution. Hi, my name is Todd Bly-Levin. I'm one of the hosts of the Walking Tall podcast, and it's our mission to help all people that are down and depressed or dealing with some sort of trauma or mental health issue to learn how to stand back up and walk tall again in their lives. Please follow us on all of our social platforms, our YouTube channel, and check out our Walking Tall movement at www.walkingtallmovement.com. Now, here's our show.
Welcome back to Walking Tall. If you were with us last week, we were so honored to be able to honor Brandon Cody's brother, Devin, who we celebrated the 25th anniversary of his passing. And while celebration may not be the right terminology, we certainly celebrated Devin and his life and what he meant to Brandon, and certainly me as well. But Dr. LaRosa, getting to know Brandon as you did and getting to hear about Devin, his brother, whom we love dearly, and celebrating the 25th, anniversary, if you will, of his passing. What did Brandon's story do for you? And what were some of your thoughts as you think back to last week's show?
Well, the whole meeting was extremely emotional for me. Having two boys, 3 years apart, I just felt overwhelmed with empathy for him, and the love that he clearly has for his brother was just shining through during every moment of our discussion. So I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to talk about Devin and really get to know him and know what a hero he was for others and how he conducted himself in this life that he led during the short time that he was here. And, for many, many hours after our meeting, I couldn't help it but bring myself back to what his family experienced in that tragic loss and all the work that they had to do to stay a healthy family unit, and focus on the life that they have to live without their son, and just how difficult the grieving process is individually as a parent, but also as a unit. So their whole family dynamic was changed when Devin passed away, and knowing what that family had to go through to rebuild and restructure and just go on from day to day impacted me so very greatly. And that's that deep empathy that I tend to have. I really just couldn't forget about that family and pictured them in my mind, although I've never had a visual of them. I truly feel as if I know them, and it was a great honor to hear that story and just to be part of Devin's life.
Yeah, no, thank you for all that. And you hit the nail right on the head. And I have had the fortunate opportunity, as I said last week, of knowing both Brandon's parents, Gary and Jane, or Lumpin' Mom, as I call them. And they are just some of the greatest people I've ever met. And it's a true testament to all of their character, as you said, to keep their family as tightly knit as they have after such a tragic event. And you also mentioned, Dr. LaRosa, Devin being a hero. And that's exactly what he was. And it was so inspiring to hear Brandon again talk about the pride he had in his brother's actions on the day of his passing. And Todd, I want to say to you, you're a hero as well. And you put your safety at risk in your experience, and unfortunately are here with us today. And Devin isn't. And so I got to believe, hearing what Devin did for his coworker, at the end of his life had to impact you to some degree. And obviously getting to know Brandon as you have over the last few months, as I've introduced you to him as one of my best friends. And, as you've gotten to know me, when I have best friends, they all meet. Like, I'm not a guy who has a friend here and a friend there. Like, I'm putting everybody together. And it was only natural for you to meet Brandon early on. And so I just really am excited and curious to hear your thoughts after hearing last week's story from Brandon.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you for your kind words, Chris. It's always, you never want to be called, I don't know, it's just a different, people say, you're a hero, and at that moment, all you're really trying to do is help somebody in need, right? And hearing Brandon talk about that moment, which I was totally unprepared for, and I don't know that you can ever prepare for a story like that, but I didn't know that about Brandon. And we'd met a couple times, totally exuberant guy, full of life. You could tell he's like loves his kids, he's adventurous, he's got that go-getter mentality. And as I was listening to him tell the story of his brother, that Brandon is like a walking example. He's honoring his brother with like every breath of his life that he leads forward. And it just tells a really cool story of the love that he had for his brother, and then how he's honoring him, probably without even knowing he's honoring him, by keeping up his tradition and his exuberant attitude, right? And I just was like, oh my God, if I met your brother today, you guys would probably be two peas in a pod. You guys would probably wrestle around on the floor together, like still today. Your kids would be wrestling. And then
Exactly.
the reality sinks in that, his brother's not here. And that really sucks. That's what pulled my heart too, like Dr. LaRosa was saying, that you think about that loss, that he doesn't have. So it was truly an amazing story. But then when he talked about how, that they had that accident, and here you got this truck, overturned, and there's nothing his brother could do. But in that last moment of complete terror, he thinks about lifting another man up and pushes him out of that burning vehicle to save that man's life. And I'm unbelievable sacrifice, and what a true hero he is. And we should, there's like those defining moments in your life sometimes when you have an opportunity to either help somebody or help yourself, and you could be your own hero, and being able to help yourself walk tall and step forward. But a true example of walking tall, and Brandon is another example of even walking taller through the adversity and carrying on that tradition. So I thought it was just an amazing story. I'm so honored to know him, and I just have a deeper appreciation for him now. So I appreciate you bringing him on.
Yeah, no, just hearing what you had to say gave me goosebumps, and I know, Todd, you don't like to consider yourself a hero, but that's exactly what I consider you to be. And I know all of our listeners think that of you as well. And if Devin were to be here with us today, I know he'd feel the same about you. And that means a lot to me to know and believe that. So and it was really an honor for me to bring Brandon on in many ways. Todd, we talk a lot about your rocks and my board of directors, and Brandon sat on my board of directors for a long time, and I found him to be somebody that's just a good person and somebody that I can always go to for sound advice, but also for encouragement. He's not a complacent guy, like you said, Todd. He's a go-getter, and he wants to move things forward regardless of whatever he's experienced in the past, while always honoring his brother. And that's somebody that I think, I've been so blessed to be surrounded with for as long as I have. So it was my honor to bring him on, and it was an even bigger honor when he, said to us that he would be our first ambassador and make himself available for conversations to folks who may have lost a sibling like he did, or help promote our mission on social media and spread our word organically in conversation. He's really been a large component of our movement growing at the speed of which, I think it has, unbelievably. And so we can't thank him enough. And Brandon, I know you're out there listening, and the three of us love you and your mom and your brother very much. And we're always here for you. And so, speaking of Brandon being there for me, he's certainly been there for me the last week. Obviously, it's coming on the first go around of the anniversary, if you will, of my experience of the parade and the 4th of July, and bringing up all of those triggers, if you will, or moments of which I harken back to my experience just a year ago. And I thought today it would be good for us to just talk about panic attacks and how those get brought on. And maybe Todd, hear some of your experiences after your event in Vegas and how you've managed them. And I'm happy to explain myself as well. But I came to this idea only because just a few days ago as well, as active as I've been on social media, I made a post about having a panic attack just a few days ago. And I listed, 5 or 6 tips or tricks that I use to kind of help get myself through that. And, that it was very interesting to see that of all the activity I've had on social media, that one has been the one that has really gained the most activity, reshares, comments, whatever the crazy social media activity is. And I came to the conclusion because of that, there are a lot of people like us that experience panic attacks that don't talk about them, but that also because they don't talk about them, they don't know how to get through them safely, or they don't know how to become aware when one may be coming on. And so, Dr. LaRosa, I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about my last one, and just get your insight to see if you could provide some tips or tactics, as we've talked offline. But this past week or so, I was on a treadmill running and exercising, and I've been pretty oblivious over the last week or two about the calendar and where it's been in terms of the dates and things of that sort. But nevertheless, I was on a treadmill running, and something caught my attention, and it hit me for the first time that, the 4th of July was coming. And that in fact, my daughter is going to be walking in a parade. And so that in itself just elevated my body temperature. And I almost felt as if like the left side of my body was hot, the right side of my body was cold, and I could just feel the blood flow going through my body. And so from there, I immediately hit stop on the treadmill and collected my belongings as best I could, because I felt it coming on. And as I was walking out of the gym, I began to hyperventilate and really had a hard time breathing. And so the next thing I did is I took my phone out of my pocket and I called my dad, just to let him know where I was at, because nobody knew where I was. And obviously I was thinking I was going to be okay, but if not, I needed somebody to know where I was. And he was then talking me through what I was feeling and helping me breathe and just reminding me I was safe and that, this was just thoughts. And so then I made it to my car, and for about 15 minutes, I just sat there and panicked. I was irrational. I was worried about things that were in the future that I couldn't control anyways. And I would never, want my daughter not to experience being in a parade. She deserves that opportunity, and she's such a good little dancer, and she's so excited to be in that parade. And so I have to come to terms with that. But yeah, it spurned a panic attack. And so, I wanted just to get your thoughts a little bit about panic attacks, where they come from, how they start, how to help mitigate them. And then Todd, I'd love to hear if you've, ever experienced something like that. It's not the first time I've had one, and we can maybe get into my previous ones earlier, but this one really came out of the blue.
Yes. So panic attacks in general are characterized by a sudden and intense fear reaction or fear response. And usually people say they just come out of nowhere. But one thing I will talk about today, because I'm a practicing behavior therapist, licensed behavior analyst, and there's a variety of cognitive behavioral methods out there. Some are more heavily researched and effective than others. So I'll definitely run through a few of those optimal treatments and just talk in general about panic disorder, because it's prevalent. It's pretty common. The general population sees about close to 4% of people in the general population experience panic attacks. Out of those
4%ers.
And out of those people, another approximate quarter also experience agoraphobia, which is fear of open spaces, came from fear of marketplace, fear of going outside. And the reason for that is that people build up fear of having a panic attack, and they don't want to have a panic attack if they're in uncharted territory, in the supermarket, at the gym, in a public place, because they feel so completely out of control. And a panic attack is so scary, they don't know how their body is going to react. They don't know how they're going to react in a public situation. if a panic attack were to come upon them. So with all of that, it's an anxiety-based disorder. It's actually characterized as an anxiety disorder. So as the underlying anxiety builds for the fear of future panic attacks, it actually makes it worse for people. So cognitive behavior therapy, again, is super effective to help people with panic attacks, particularly face-to-face treatment, particularly relaxation methods such as breathing, and something called interoceptive exposure, which is like a somatic exposure for the body. So it's sort of like putting yourself into simulated fear response dynamics internally, and then allowing yourself to work through those bodily sensations of utter fear and chaos, confusion, pounding, racing hearts. As you said, different temperature changes that you might experience in your body, all kinds of things like that. Hot yoga is one particular activity that may simulate a panic attack for some people. Now you might say, what the heck would I ever want to do something like that for? Right? I want to do hot yoga to relax, not to induce a panic attack or a similar feeling to a panic attack. But it's under those controlled situations and in knowing that those symptoms were actually sparked by something that person is controlling, that enables the person to work through it and to stay connected to those feelings as they're going through it, interpreting them, understanding them, and then knowing how to de-escalate their bodies when in that particular experience. Now, one thing our society loves to do is approach things from a corrective stance. So I experienced this, now what do I do? But a very big part of behavior therapy is going at it from a proactive or antecedent-based approach. So it is knowing what your internal antecedents are, your triggers. It's knowing, so when you were on that treadmill and when you started to have these feelings, I asked you, what did you feel slightly before that? You told me. And then what did you feel slightly before that? Right? And so you kind of work backwards. And so we determined for your situation, in particular, you should create a calendar and you should delineate on that calendar all the particular notable potential situations that may cause you this great anxiety. These things that you know are triggers. And as we talked about from our prior shows, you don't always know what those triggers are, right? But there are some that you certainly do. Sound of fireworks, 4th of July coming, parade approaching, your daughter being in the parade, all of these things have dates. All of these things are definable. So you would indicate all of these things on a visual display for yourself of your choosing, right? And then each and every day, you think about these events, each and every day, several times a day, you practice your self-calming activities, such as your breathing exercises, and you know that when you start to experience these antecedent variables, these internal antecedents, you can enact those self-calming strategies instantly and with ease because your body has practiced it so many times. So in the middle of a crisis is not the best time to get your body and your brain to cooperate, right? Yeah. It's not the best time to pull out your best breathing techniques or any of the methods that your therapist has taught you, right? Because you're already in a panic mode. It's not it's kind of like when you're, in complete chaos and disarray. That's not the best time to pull out your best stuff, right?
It's so funny you say that because, and Todd, I want to hear what you have to say too here, but it's not your best time. And you had mentioned, I don't have, I guess I never realized I was capable of having panic attacks, even though I have had them. I never have been fearful of them. It just came out of nowhere. Right. But to your point, you don't want to you don't ever want to have them, frankly, but when you do, you certainly don't want them to be in a gym or the grocery store or the library. And I was walking from the gym and literally in the parking lot, keeled over, trying to catch my breath. And I remember for like 1 second thinking to myself, man, what a fool I am. Like sitting here hunched over in the parking lot, trying to catch my breath. And people are like, man, what is this guy doing? You
Well,
know?
first of all, those are the thoughts that make it worse for people. So you have to think, I'm never going to see these people again in my life, you know,
Exactly.
and they couldn't care less about me right now. Right?
So,
You know,
well, Todd, you know, have you experienced panic attacks in similar nature? And I know we've talked offline about, you know, some of your tactics to overcome some of your maybe anxiety or whatnot. But I really want to hear what you have to say, being, you know, much farther along in your journey than I.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I'm sorry you're having those. They're not anything, to make light of. Your experience, fortunately, our society, especially in the United States, a lot of people have not gone through that moment of terror that you have gone through. And so, like Dr. LaRosa had mentioned, you have to understand in that moment when that happens, don't worry about as much as we have been raised to like look nice and care about what you look like on the outside. Man, that
You seen
rules are
me?
changed now. Rules are changed. Like you need to just take care of yourself and don't worry about what someone else is thinking in that moment. But and they should be the rules have been should be rewritten anyways, because we should never really think or care too much about what someone else thinks about us on the outside. We should be happy with ourselves. But I think for me, it's tough because like I love Dr. LaRosa's approach on the calendaring out leading up to a particular event. So for me, come September, because my Las Vegas shooting was October 1st, but right around probably towards the end of August, to be honest, I'm probably a good 6 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. It might even be almost 2 months where I will start to get a little bit more antsy. I will start to become way more vigilant in my surroundings. I'll start to stutter a little bit. My words will start to get jumbled up. I'll start to get that headache. I'll start to have some nightmares again. It's like your body just knows, all right, you went through this, get ready. I'm going to start preparing you. And you're going to start going through all these visuals again. And I mean, yeah, I have stuff every day that I deal with, but I guess I've been practicing that, that kind of pre-notion of what could happen in that breathing technique, really probably since that first day where I've gone in to a restaurant or something else. And I'm constantly thinking about the first 5 minutes. Like if you're having a conversation with me, I'm probably listening, but I'm really not listening all that much because I'm focusing on who I'm profiling. I'm profiling every single person that's in there. I'm making sure that if I had to make a reaction to an incident, that I know exactly who I'm grabbing, where I'm going. I'm going through all of these different fight or flight scenarios in my mind. So that way I can get to a point where, okay, I can simmer down a little bit and I can relax. And I honestly have not, I've been very nervous in certain situations, but I can't say that I've had like a genuine panic attack. Now,
Lucky.
I've woken up and I've had some like where you experience that hot flash type thing and you're like, holy cow, what happened? And my wife will tell me like I just had a nightmare or I was yelling or something in my sleep. So I've definitely had them. I just don't, I guess I haven't recognized maybe those moments, or I've been able to bring that level down because we all have different experiences in our life, right? And like Chris, you and I were talking, or we were talking about even just like the sports mentality of it, right? About being a pitcher on a mound. I remember Ken Revisa was an amazing sports psychologist. Remember Ken Revisa?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Ken Revisa. I mean, the late
Yes.
Kenny was so amazing. He was a professor of sports psychology, Dr. LaRosa
At
at
Fullerton,
Cal State
Cal State
Fullerton.
Fullerton it was. Yeah.
Yep. And he worked
Love
with
it.
the Angels and he worked with, I think, the Cubs, and he worked with all kinds of different major league teams. The guy was a guru when it came to the mental approach and taking yourself out of an adverse kind of crazy situation where you got bases loaded, you just threw 2 balls, your anxiety's up, like, what do you do? And so his tactic was, and I took this every single day. He goes, when you go show up at the ballpark before the game even starts, find a visual, something that you can focus on, that you can, in a game, you're going to go to that particular moment, whether it's a tree in the outfield, a stand, a billboard, something, find something that you're going to be able to like lock onto. And then when that situation comes up where your base is loaded, you get 2 balls and you're not feeling right, take that trip around the mound, focus on that one thing, and then let your mind go. Get out of the ball game, separate from the stadium, think about who planted that tree? How old is that tree? Or what was it like? How do you get those banners up on there? Like, is that glued on? And take yourself out for about just a few seconds and then put yourself back in.
Yeah.
And get back on the mound and breathe and relax and put yourself in the moment and control the moment. And I think that's what I've always tried to do, is get to a point where I can control my moment, my environment. As much as we know, it really is uncontrollable because you can't control what some knucklehead's going to do or what somebody's going to say. But at least I can control my surroundings. So,
yeah.
Well,
no, it's interesting you say that, Todd, because
Todd,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Chris. That is what we talked about a little bit yesterday, why you might not be recognizing panic attacks when you have it, because you have the tools. You're already employing a lot of these techniques that you were taught through sports. You are that quick stimulus change, your disconnect, and then coming back to a situation, you're allowing your body time to calm down, the distraction of a particular stimulus, all these. I love this guy. I wish I would have known him. My goodness.
Well, thank you, Kenny Revisa.
Yeah. It's,
gosh,
and Todd,
it.
you said,
And
he wrote a book too. I'm sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
He wrote a book.
The Mental
called,
ABCs of Baseball.
Yep.
Say it again.
The Mental ABCs of Baseball.
Yep.
Yeah.
I need that for my son.
Yeah. Well, I have a copy, Vanetta. We'll get one to Vito. Todd, you said something that was super interesting to me, since I've known you on July 7th, we've pretty much talked every day. And there was a small gap in our relationship where, we weren't as connected. And it was, the middle to end of September. And, I recognized to a degree, that I would check in on you. Hey, how you doing? You okay? You need to talk. But you were, pretty pulled back this past year. And it wasn't anything I took personal. I knew exactly what was going on and I knew where you were at, and you made yourself vulnerable to me in private conversations. And, to a degree, I'm fortunate because I'm not as, removed from, my passions or my existence as it is, as we come closer, just past the anniversary of my experience. But it certainly has impacted how I feel, and it certainly has impacted how I go through my day right now. And it certainly has, impacted just my thinking. And, Dr. LaRosa, those tips you gave about, calendaring out my events or what could happen, or my therapist, told me to schedule worry time in my day, for 15 minutes, just allow yourself to sit back and worry about everything that can go wrong, write it down, and then, put that in that vast, as you call it, storage of containers in our brain. But that's not easy to do, so do you have any idea or tips, doctor, to compartmentalize or dissociate? Not that it's always great to do so, but I'm developing that skill to a degree. And I know, Todd, it sounds like you've almost mastered it at this point. So, no, I know you haven't, but you get my point.
Chris, you know what, Chris, you work so hard on so many things for yourself and for others that I know you've got this, and I know you're going to get through this, and you just have to keep the faith and, keep walking tall, just as you are here today. In the midst of everything that's difficult for you, here you are for others. And here you are so passionate about this Walking Tall movement and helping others. That is such a testament. That is a strength for you. And when you're feeling those times where you're losing it a little bit, go back to that and just know that your true character and your true nature is so darn good that you need to give yourself as much credit as you can afford as often as you can, because those are the times you're building yourself up. And, it's funny, the whole notion of panic attacks, everybody has a degree of self-efficacy for their role in life in a variety of ways, right? And we learn a lot of this behavior vicariously, watching others and sort of likening our experiences to people who are successful that remind us of ourselves, right? So taking strength in Todd's journey and how he has learned to deal with a lot of these panic reactions yourself. You are also high-level player and coach and been in situations where you've had to pull yourself together under extreme circumstances in a sporting, situation. You have those experiences to draw from. You have amazing relationships. Your friends and your family are source. When I hear stories about all of the people in your life that support you, I'm so thankful for that for you. I'm proud of those connections for you. You have all of that, to kind of, dig into when you absolutely need to. And I think about my grandmother a lot because she was one of the strongest people that ever existed on this planet. She was in her late 80s and she had an autoimmune eye disease that was pretty much eating away the tissues of her cornea. So she was pretty much going blind, and she had several eye surgeries that were extraordinarily painful, where they couldn't put her under, full anesthesia. And she had to really go about her life knowing that she was going to be completely blind at any minute. And she was probably 90% blind. One eye was completely gone. The other one only had pinhole vision. And she managed her life with a magnifying glass. She paid all of her bills on time. She was still my personal organizer. She was on top of everything in my life, during my time in college. And she started to have anxiety that was pretty severe. And she started to have panic attacks when she was in her 80s because of this fear of this imminent blindness. And I remember my whole entire life, she had this approach with me that was sort of the just do it because you don't have a choice attitude. And when she started having these panic attacks, she took the approach where she had some kind of, I forget what it was. I think it was a Xanax that the doctor prescribed to her, sort of like PRN as needed, and sometimes when the panic attacks started, she would say to me, geez, these, she'll curse a little bit, panic attacks.
Come on, Vanette, I want to hear you curse.
These goddamn panic attacks, And she'd say it to me just like that. And she would say, I need to take a pill, so she took a pill and then, a couple months later, she'd say, I'm sick of these goddamn things already. I'm not taking these pills. I'm done with this, And then, she'd say to me, she'd tell me exactly what it was, exactly why it happened. And she would say to me, I'm sick of this. I'm done with it. Panic attack, come on. And she called it an anxiety attack. That's what she called it, but it was really a panic attack. And her approach to it was, this is what happened to me because, I'm pretty much going blind. But what am I going to do? I have to deal with it. I still have my life. I still have my family. And she just had this hardcore approach to life, that just said, I know that it's going to be tough. She, the greatest generation, right? Who's lived through tougher times than they have. And she approached it with, this is my reality now. And, she had lost her husband. She had lost her brother, her sister. She had lost my father and my uncle, both of her sons. I was the only living family member that she really had in the final, 10 years or so of her life. And she went through all this pain, all this tragedy, all this suffering. And she approached every single day with a new strength and vigilance to deal with the obstacles that were in front of her, knowing what they are, and just saying, I got this, I can do this. The toughest woman I've ever known, and when I talk about efficacy and strength from others around us, I look at how she has dealt with things and how I grew up watching her deal with all these things. And it helps me so tremendously when I feel beaten down or I feel the ultimate pressures of life just closing in all around me, that I just, I can't deal with anything anymore. My grandma Helen comes out and says, cut it out.
Well, it's so funny, Dr. Wilson, thank you so much for,
Yeah,
what you
awesome.
said about me. And you're exactly right. I've been so fortunate to have just an amazing support system around me over the last year and the 41 years of my life, for that matter. But I would say, I've had no greater support system, than I've had in the last year, through Todd and yourself and the Walking Tall movement. And it's so important to have people in your lives that, not only can you look to for inspiration or look to for guidance or look to for a hug when you need, but also, look to for, in motivation and inspiration and an ear to bend and a shoulder to cry on. And Todd, that's exactly what you've been for me. And Vanetta, Dr. LaRosa, you too now. And, that's exactly why we started the Walking Tall movement, because we also recognize that there are people maybe in this world that don't have that resource available, that don't have that source of strength. And Todd, you've provided such a source of strength for me. Not to say that, you haven't suffered yourself at times, but just our conversations offline and our vulnerability amongst ourselves and tips and tactics and guidance we're sharing amongst each other, and motivation that you're providing me, certainly, and maybe I'm providing you at a time or two, but that's really what we're inspiring to do, and maybe we can help reduce some panic attacks for some folks as we go on our journey. So as you hear what Dr. LaRosa says, what do you have to say, Todd? Oh, sorry, doctor.
No, go ahead.
Just one quick thing about the treatment approach to this. So when we were talking about the calendar and the events and the understanding of internal antecedents, also, if people could just create a little anxiety scale for themselves, something 1 to 5, give yourself visuals, if you will, check in on yourself multiple times per day, as well as run through these breathing and calming exercises. Also, go through life challenging yourself, like Grandma Helen, put yourself in hot yoga, stretch yourself out on the treadmill, get your heart rate up, get your body temperature elevated, and try to stimulate some of those feelings of panic, and then go at them, go to try to accept them and relieve yourself of them at the same time, because you're constantly building strength for when the real things happen. I just wanted to finish with that.
Sorry, Todd, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Todd.
No, I love the idea of having a calendar or some sort of just historical data that you can put yourself, immerse yourself into throughout the year, and be able, as you start to grow and mature through your tragedy, your adversity, alcoholism or any type of adverse situation that you've been put into, and that those milestones are coming up or whatever that may be. But I love that piece. I think, what I think about Chris is, you mentioned something about your daughter being in that parade, and it really struck me, that hit a chord with me, because, Las Vegas shooting was at a concert, right? And for me now, I've got kids, like Dylan's, he's 19 and Gracie's 16 and she's about to be 17, which is crazy. I wish I could put a weight on her.
That means you're getting old, brother.
No, I go backwards. I don't know why everyone else is celebrating another year. I go backwards, but it's I really struggle. I struggle immensely with my kids, maybe going to a concert. Like Gracie's gone to a few with her friends, and I think about the experience that she's having, and that prior to the first shot for me, I would be like, yeah, they're so much fun. And, I hear you going to concerts, and I really love the fact that people are going and being able to dive into that, because that's what I used to be able to do. But I get very nervous when, my kids are talking about concerts, and my kids know that. They know I'm nervous. And so I'm like I go into this kind of mindset of, okay, what's security like? Where's it at? Is there elevated positions? What law enforcement agency is going to be in charge of that security piece? I'll go into like all the rules, like is there metal detectors? What's going on? and I'll like try to prepare myself mentally, which maybe lowers my anxiety a little bit because I go into fact find mode and I want to like research everything. And I'll play in my mind like, well, maybe I'll just tail them for a little bit and they won't even know I'm there. Maybe I'll just go and I'll just hang out just so, at least I've got control. But that's probably the most nervous I get. So I'm really feeling when you mentioned that to me that, Josie she was going to be in the parade.
It's still
I thought,
you talking about it right
oh,
now is making my
man.
heart race. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's and
So
and they
what's
went
the
to a
advice
parade.
there?
Yeah,
Right?
well, they went real quick. They went to my family went to a parade this past Memorial Day. There's parades here in Illinois to celebrate the Memorial Day holiday, and I did not go. I couldn't bring myself to it. I mean, like, Todd, like I look at it like, as you said, I love going to concerts. I'm a music buff, right? Like I'll never stop going to concerts. It's a different experience for me now. It's not the same as it ever was. But I'm fortunate that my experience wasn't at that because it would have taken it away from me, and I feel for you in that respect. And just like my experience took parades away from me, if that's really like a thing to be taken away, right?
And it's okay that you don't go.
Of course. But what I will say is as my family was there that Memorial Day holiday, I'm texting, hey, make sure you're standing near police officers. What's your location? What, I know where the parade is. It's elevated positions. There's banks here. Like stay away from those, get near the houses and, all these things. And it's almost to a respect, like unfair to my family, because I'm badgering them and it's only because of my anxiety. And listen, there's been a million concerts before a route.
It's
and
because of your experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's been a million concerts before a route and there's been a million parades before my experience and there'll be a million after and likely all of them will go fine. But because of our experience, as you said, it's never the same for us. And in that panic, this conversation has been really good for me, frankly, and I hope anybody else listening for that matter, to just understand that it's going to be there if you have an experience, whatever you have. I met with a woman the other day who was in a very, very bad car accident. She has anxiety, panics every time she thinks about going into a car, right? Like I was in a car accident long ago and I had that same feeling for quite some time, so It's not just being in a mass shooting or whatever, but Dr. LaRosa, Todd asked if you had any tips kind of or suggestions or thoughts about managing that as well.
Well, like I said, just attacking things head on is really the best way to deal with these kinds of things. The more that you put them off and hope that they're not going to happen again, the more you isolate yourself and the more that you fear them happening again. So, it's just changing that mentality, first and foremost. With regard to what you just said about feeling bad for your family, that sort of thinking, that sort of goes down a little bit of a depressive road for me a little bit in a person's thought process. I want you, just be aware of that. Your family is grateful that you care for them and that you are spending all of that mental energy in a thought process because you want them to be safe and you love them. And I know that they must know that. So do not beat yourself up for that.
You're the sheep herder, man. You got to,
the truth is, like I said, and Todd, no different than you don't want
It's
your
natural.
daughter to not go to concerts, right? You don't.
Yeah.
It is natural, but Todd, you would never ask Gracie not to go to a concert, just like I would never ask Josie not to walk in the parade. That's experiences they deserve,
Exactly. But your worry and your fear is something that comes out of love, and it also comes out of your trauma. These are things that are part of you, and you don't have to apologize for them. And they make you the caring and loving person that you are. So again, that should be something you applaud yourself for, not feel bad for.
No, I appreciate that. And I think, what I want, and I hope anybody listening today, also hears that, what Dr. LaRosa is saying, to attack your anxiety or your worry head on to a degree within comfort, right? We don't want to go balls to the wall, if you will, and spurn on, unmanageable panic attacks.
Of course.
But my therapist, Lou, my angel, she tells me that if I don't address my worries via journaling or via a calendar, like you said, Dr. LaRosa, the brain is going to plant a little flag on it and say, hey, it's, you know, you don't want to address it yet, but it's going to come up at some point. You might as well talk about it now, you know, because then it will come in an environment you don't expect it.
Right. And, you know, as always, you know, these tips and tricks and suggestions and deeper understandings of, you know, various mental health characteristics, they come from experience, they come from research, they come from, you know, the best treatments, the most well-researched and documented treatment methods out there, but they also come from personal experiences. And, you know, I had only one panic attack in my life, and it was just an extraordinary buildup of stress. I was young in my field and I had a very difficult caseload. I was working with victims of domestic violence and traveling almost 3 hours in one direction just to provide counseling for
That's
a group
New York City for you.
downtown Brooklyn. No easy way to get there. You know, very, very difficult, but I felt very committed to doing this. By the time my time was spent, I actually lost money on my endeavors, but knowing that people were relying on me, waiting for me and I was the only person that got some of these women to even open up and talk in the first place, you know, being in my mid-20s, very just different, you know, places in life, different backgrounds, but I was able to connect with these wonderful, beautiful women. And one of them was experiencing psychosis to a degree, and there were lives on the line. And I had a really bad day, bad weather, dead of winter. I missed my train, and I knew I was running late to the therapy session, and I couldn't handle it. It was one series of events after another. A 3-hour commute became a 5-hour. I didn't know if she was going to wait for me, and I was afraid of what she might do without the help that I had to continue to provide for her. And after missing the train and taking another one, getting to a subway, being put on a different subway track that I didn't recognize before ever. There was no one around. I had one Metro card that we had at the time. They don't exist anymore, I don't think. And I just put like $20 on it, which is all I had in my life at that time. And I dropped the card in the tracks. And there was no one around. So I did what any other good citizen would do. I jumped the turnstile, right? So yeah, so I had to do it. And so
I think we're past the statute of limitations on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
So there were undercover cops there, unfortunately. So of course they came to get me, and I lost it. I said, there's my card, it's right there, you could see it. That's it. I just put money on it. You don't understand. I have to go to work, you know, and I just unleashed on the cops. One was a gentleman, another one, a lady. The gentleman was actually laughing, you know, under his breath at me because I was just like, I have to get to, just arrest me. Give me the ticket. I just have to go to work. I don't care, you know, and I lost it. And then they said, all right, just give us your license and all this. I opened up my bag to find that I left my license at home on the kitchen table, had no identification. So I said, that's it. You know, just take me away. There's nothing else anyone could do.
I didn't know we had a criminal on our team.
I know.
So, I mean, it was really just a melee of chaos, right? So finally, at the end of the day, I said, just call my employer, please. I have people waiting for me. Just know that I'm telling the truth. And they did. They checked me out. They let me go. And then I had to get to my other subway to get where I had to go. Just at that particular time, there were so many people on the track. I didn't know if I'd get on, and I broke down. I had a full-fledged panic attack. And the heart was racing, my body temperature was elevated. I felt like I was going to pass out. Everything was swirling.
Yep.
And I had just had a Dunkin' Donuts bag in my hand, and I emptied it out, and I started breathing in the bag. And I had my grandmother's approach, like, oh, this damn thing, like this panic attack. How does this have to happen to me now? Hasn't my day been bad enough already? You know? Yeah. And so I got myself through it, and I breathed my way out of it. And I was an absolute mess physically and mentally, but somehow I made it. And wouldn't you know that my client actually waited for me? It was over 3 hours that she waited for me. And she was it was notoriously known that she was a no-show for most of her therapy sessions with other therapists prior to that. And, you know, I like to think that I spent several hours with her making calls for her, getting her kids, you know, social security benefits, doing everything I can do for her, more so than just a therapist would. And I like to think I, you know, I made a difference in her life. But anyway, that was
Yeah, like that's exactly walking tall, you know,
Yeah.
right then and there is
Perseverance.
exactly what, you know, we're trying to inspire in the world. And that story in itself, doctor, is like just so amazing to hear. You went from, you know, complete mush, as Todd says, I've been at
plugging
times,
in.
to strength. And Todd, you know, hearing Dr. LaRosa quick, what are some of your thoughts as we kind of wrap up today's show?
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I think the takeaways, thank you for sharing that story too, by the way, because now we know you're a criminal, which is
Yes, that's
awesome.
right.
So,
We didn't do any background checks when we started
yeah.
this. So.
They let me go.
Yeah, that's true.
Good.
That's true. Yeah, you were not convicted.
That's right. We're good.
No, you know, I come away from this with a cool idea that Dr. LaRosa had mentioned, you know, with just kind of trying to calendar out some of those higher moments where you have some anxiety. I think the important piece to you know, what you were bringing up too, Chris, is, you know, trust your support, lean on your support. I think we all need to probably do a better job of when somebody is maybe anxious, when somebody's maybe not themselves. You know, it's been so common for our society and us growing up, and especially in our generation, to kind of put our feelings aside. And maybe the question that we should be asking each other, especially when someone's down or just not themselves, is, hey, are you okay? Like, is something coming up? Is something coming up that is maybe, you know, been a bad moment in your life? Like, are you feeling some anxiety about something? Are you nervous about, you know, where you're at in this moment? Did you have a bad day? I think just maybe opening up ourselves to that person to then explain, yeah, you know what, I lost my dad last year, or I lost my dad 10 years ago, and I'm coming up on my anniversary of it. And so I'm just thinking about it a little bit. Or I was in a car accident, and I just witnessed something, and I'm just a little shaky. Then at least it gives us the opportunity, because in our human nature, for the most part, I believe that most of us are good, and most of us want to help or offer some sort of support in that moment, right? And so I think, like, if we recognize that, Chris, you know, someone's hunched over in the middle of a parking lot, hey, are you okay? But most people just walk by.
But there's two people who just,
You know, it's like, oh shit, I'm not going to talk to that guy.
Exactly.
Get out of here. You know, like, people are afraid to, like, say something. And you brought it up a while back, and I praise you, Chris, like Dr. LaRosa was doing earlier, about just your passion about trying to really get our voice and our walking tall mentality out. So I know we have to be careful in today's society, and I'm not telling anybody to, like, approach an individual, and especially a stranger, because unfortunately, you just never know. So we always have to be safe and secure. But if you know that person and somebody's just off, maybe ask a question like, hey, you doing all right? Like, is everything okay? Because I get that. My Roxel will recognize certain things about me. Now it's been repetitive. I'll get some calls, I know, from certain people, or they'll say, hey, we're thinking about you, you know, leading up to the event. And I love it. Like, it makes me feel that somebody cares, right? And that I'm not alone. And that's what we need more of in our world. So I thought this was a great show. Great job in bringing this up, Chris.
You know,
I appreciate it.
It makes me think about, you know, we talked about Brandon at the beginning of today's show, right? And obviously the 25th anniversary, if you will, of Devin's passing. And he and I had a conversation just the other day, and I was asking him, how his parents were doing coming up on such a monumental event, right? Like if we're married for 25 years or our daughter's son turned 25, it's a big momentous occasion, right? No different than this. But it just is a different emotion that it spurns on. And we had a good conversation about how his parents were doing and even how he was feeling. And I would say, there is some evident difference in even Brandon, at times right now. And that's okay. And we talk about Devin, and, he talked about planting that flagpole in his lake house, up north with his dad. And I said, hey man, why don't you put a plaque or something there, and put Devin's name on it, or whatever the case may be. And so we started thinking of different ways there, but no different than I mentioned earlier too, you coming up on route, as you do each year. And now me, this coming to be the first experience of, the news talking about my experience, not me personally, but just the event. And it's a different way that I never thought I'd have to go through life, as we celebrated our country's Independence Day, So Dr. LaRosa, thank you so much for all your insights today. I think you provided just a wealth of information and insight and compassion and empathy, as you always do. So as we kind of wrap up today's show, what are some of your final thoughts?
We think about how as a society, we are prone to keep going and pushing through our pain. And a lot of times we dissociate and we compartmentalize too much. Sometimes, and I've done this myself, I'm guilty of this, losing a lot of people who I love very dearly. Sometimes it's so painful to think about them, because the second you think about a great moment or a great memory, then you break down, you cry, you become sad, then you're out of the game for 2 or 3 hours because you're just sad and overwhelmed. And people avoid that because life goes on and people have kids and jobs and responsibilities. But it's so important, as your therapist pointed out to you, to carve out that worry time, carve out the sad time, carve out the time to address your feelings as they are, because we can't run from them forever. And the more we dissociate, compartmentalize, and push things off, the more things build up, and then they do come back to let us experience them in ways that are unplanned and really just unprescribed. And sometimes that's also, the panic responses and things come from a lot of things that are just not processed. So cognitive behavior therapy is about experiencing things, reprocessing things, re-examining things, analyzing things, and putting them into a perspective so that we know in the future how to take the steps to deal with the reactions that our brain and our bodies are going to give us in response to trauma and stress, because we're human. And a lot of these experiences are part of the human condition. And so, again, like Todd said, we're not giving advice. We're not telling people, we're not giving you a therapeutic map, but we're encouraging you to seek treatment from a qualified professional that could lead you through a variety of the strategies that we have talked about here today. It's very, very important that people deal with their mental health issues and accept them for what they are at each stage of the game. It's not stagnant, it's not forever, and things can and will improve with the proper treatment.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Yeah.
And you said it best. We are human, and we all are human no matter our experience. And if we can take that mentality throughout our daily lives, I think we would be a much kinder society. And we wouldn't go past that person that's hunched over in the parking lot having a panic attack, as a couple did for me. And I don't blame them by any means, so please don't misunderstand. But I just wanted to say, and I've not done this yet, but as we wrap up today's show, I want to just encourage anybody listening, please go to our website, www.walkingtallmovement.com. There's a wealth of resources on our page that'll take you to some great opportunities for you to reach out and get more support if you need it. Obviously, we're just a podcast at this point, and as Doctor said, we're not providing any medical advice. We're just giving a conversation and a perspective. So please go to our website. There's a wealth of resources. Follow us on all of our social media. We have Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. The list goes on and on. We're very active, the three of us, on LinkedIn. So please engage with us as much as possible. We'd love to hear how you're doing, or hear your thoughts about what we're doing. So please, as much as you can, engage with us. And then lastly, when you do go to our webpage, we've started a Walking Tall newsletter. So just a few weeks ago, we put out our first introductory newsletter, just kind of to inform anybody who we are, what we're about. And then coming up, we're going to be putting out we've already put out at the end of June to celebrate Men's Mental Health Month, our June newsletter. And then moving forward, at the end of every month, the last Friday of every month, we'll be putting out a Walking Tall newsletter talking mental health and updating all of you on our Walking Tall movement. So please check us out on all of our websites. And Todd, I know you want to plug something else, so have at it.
Yeah, I just want to be able to like just put some light on one thing really quick. I know that we have all these months and we have all these like celebratory days of like, men's mental health or women's mental health. It's mental health year, it's mental health day, it's mental health hour, like it doesn't stop. So yeah, like Chris, like you were mentioning, we've got some great support pieces on our website and whatnot, but just take care of yourself and be kind. And if you're feeling down and out, take that moment like Dr. LaRosa said, and it's okay to take the 15 minutes. It's okay to take the 3 hours. Separate yourself from life for a minute. Take care of yourself. Stand tall, walk tall. Know that that's okay. Put it in front of you instead of behind you. Keep it always in front of you. Your anxiety, your what you're going through, you're not alone. There's people that will support you. You're going to deal with it on your own in terms of how you internally process things, but you're physically not alone. We are here for you. We're here to walk tall with you. So stand back up, get on your feet, dust yourself off, and let's go forward together. So yeah, I love you both. And this is just such an amazing ride. And I think we have an opportunity to really help a lot of people and create a new mindset. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, can't say it any better than that, folks. So have a great rest of your week. Please tune in, check us out on all of our website and social media. Have a great rest of your week, as I said, and walk tall.
Walk tall.
Walk tall, everybody.
Walk tall.
We love you.